A new beginning, another opportunity to make a statement. Lionheart celebrates its roots with the car that started it all. 18 races to determine who is the best in the most exciting form of auto racing on the planet. 200-mile-per-hour Indy cars inches from disaster or glory. There can only be one Lionheart Speedway Series champion whose name will be etched into the Lionheart history books. The Lionheart Speedway Series presented by Moser Racing starts now.
Speed, showmanship, strategy. Those were some of the main storylines from Pocono Raceway when it came to the first Triple Crown race of the 2022 season. For many drivers, their championship hopes were built upon. For others, their hopes took a little bit of a snag. But now for the drivers, it's about trying to harness some of the intensity and harness some of the frustrations in the case of others to try and turn things around at Atlanta. This is the GSI Atlanta 200 presented by Next Level Racing. Hello everyone and welcome to the 5th race of Season 2 of the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by Moser Racing, live on RaceSpot TV and ESTV. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud9 gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. My name's Justin Prince. Alongside me is Andrew Kinsella for tonight's action, along with the producer Tyler Maxson. You can follow along with live timing and scoring thanks to our partners over at ATVO to follow along with your favorite teams and drivers in the virtual world of motorsport. Let's dive straight into our graphics esports countdown to green as we get ready to go racing at Hotlanta, one of the quickest tracks in the South. In fact, the fastest track in all the South, Andrew. Pocono was an exciting one to say the very least, but with the first Triple Crown down from the NLR schedule, now it's going to be intriguing how this part of the calendar fares out.
Absolutely. The first Triple Crown is now out of the way, done and dusted, but we really have an interesting schedule in front of us. Atlanta is one of those tracks where, as you say, it's very, very fast, but it's also one of those drivers tracks where you really need to manage the throttle, manage your steering input, pick your lines very, very carefully. We go to a similar racetrack in Kentucky. Then we get into sort of the meat of the next part of the schedule, Gateway, Michigan, Nashville. We have a really nice short oval, a big super speedway, and another short oval before we finally get into the big one, Indianapolis on July 9th. And that's the one that these drivers are now trying to build momentum towards, and that's our first double points race of the season. So we've got a very fascinating schedule in store between then and now, and really a lot of these drivers, as you mentioned, they've seen their championship hopes take a little bit of a hit so far, Justin, and they really need to get some momentum starting here tonight at Atlanta.
It's going to be very intriguing which drivers are able to maintain the momentum they did build up from Homestead, Texas, Milwaukee, and Pocono, and which others start the momentum trip now. Here's a look at the Graphics Esports driver standings, and Joe Branch, out of consistency, is leading the standings 3 points ahead of Craig Forsyth, a two-time winner this season, and Matt Wagner, one of the quickest drivers in the first half of majority of the races this season. Trevor Malone, Andrew Wood round out the top 5, and keep in mind, the difference between the top 5 split in about half in the span of one race from Pocono.
Absolutely. Everything is so tight up at the top of these standings. You look at the top 5, 13 points between them, but only 3 points between first and third right now. And even all the way down in a 10th spot, that is 39 points between first and 10th. That is well within what can swing you in one race's time. So all of these drivers need to be on their best behavior. You've got some surprises in that mix there. Luis Gonzalez Nunez having a very strong season so far. Sam Ryman, consistency, maybe not speed, but he's really been able to bring home the results so far. But then also a big story, Justin, who's not on this graphic we have right here. The likes of Michael Goodman, who has been at the front of virtually every race, but just hasn't seemed to be able to finish it. Jacob Oster down in 22nd position right now. Absolutely disastrous start to the season so far. He's one of those drivers who will definitely be looking to turn it around today.
Michael Goodman, for reference, 16th position in the standings. Here's a look at the team standings presented by HyperX. And Team Race for Sunset, 4 points up over Powerslide Motorsports, Synergy Motorsports Black, 40 Sim Racing, Team Race vs. Arctic, Dark Horse Racing have all showed great speed from the get-go. It's extremely tight amongst the top 8 if you can even stretch back to Transcendent Motorsports. And that's the big difference from one round to the next, right? Transcendent Motorsports was top 3 entering Pocono. They leave Pocono at 8th.
The amount of parity in this series, Justin, is absolutely outstanding. But the one thing that we have to talk about is the disastrous start that Factory-backed Motorsports, your defending team champions, have had to the start of the season. They are one of those teams, the two teams at the bottom of this graphic, that are sort of a little bit out of touch with all of the rest of the teams, and they just have a mountain to climb with just how well all of these teams have been doing so far in this season.
Let's take a look at the rookie standings presented by Butt Kicker, and Andrew Wood as part of the top 5 of the overall standings. Top of the rookie standings, Samuel Ryman, Dakota DeMay, Shane Coogan, Gavin Sanders, part of a strong rookie core with Jim Herrick and Gabriel Wood round with the top 7. All those drivers double-digit points. And you can see even then the rookie standings emphasizing struggles for some early. Let's take a look at the series details presented by GSI. It's Season 2 of this history of the campaign for the Speedway side of the card. Alexis Newsom, the defending champion, up on the box throughout the season for Oster. But these drivers coming out of the first Triple Crown looking to fight in these custom fixed setups built by yourself, Andrew.
Yeah, and this will definitely be a challenging setup for these drivers here today. One of the major challenges with any super speedway, but particularly one with as high banks as Atlanta has, is that the car that's made to turn left and handle well in a left-hand turn on the high banks, it does not handle well on the flats. And the start-finish line here is very, very flat, so you're going to see, especially on the restarts here, a lot of difficulties for these drivers getting going here, and we might even have a few incidents of wheel spin where the driver just loses the back of the car. But once the run gets going, the big thing with Atlanta, this is before the repave that we've seen in the real world, we of course have the old scan here in the sim. And what does that mean? That means extreme amounts of tire degradation as this run goes on here. So that is definitely something that all of these drivers are going to have to be aware of and manage over the course of this race.
And how big has that been in the history of things? Let's take a look at the event details in turn, which are brought to you by Moser Racing. It's the 6th time the DW12 has raced in the Peach State. Force this competition for Lionheart sanction action. The pole position has converted victory 3 times in its history, with 2 times ending under caution. Keep in mind that when it came to last year, it was Robert Malechka with absolutely blistering pace who put his name into the championship conversation hat with how quick he was here at Hotlanta. It's going to be intriguing, though, which driver does so this time out, Andrew, as these competitors are finishing up the final moments of the practice. And to say it's been difficult for some is an understatement. One of the main procedures done by Lionheart Racing Series officials is practice starts. Tire spin has been prevalent on both the single file and double file variety of restarts tonight.
Yeah, as I mentioned, it is definitely going to be a key factor in this race, is managing that wheel spin. It's just one of those things that, with the way that the differential works in these cars, especially on an oval track, and with the way that the gearing has to work, and again, with the way that the car has to be balanced to make it through the corners, it's just not very happy, especially at a slow speed with no downforce in a straight line. So really, really big challenge. And then, of course, there's nothing, once you get going, there's no real break for these drivers because they're going to have to manage the lines, manage the tires. It's going to be a very big challenge for these drivers here today.
Final moments of practice wrapping up. Ricky Harden is at the top of the practice charts with the 24.787. Matt Wagner, Trevor Malone, Dakota DeMade, Mike Rigney round out the session's top 5. Separation is about of 2/3 of a tenth of a second. But qualifying just about to get underway. 5 minutes solo qualifying. 2 laps up on the board here from Hampton, Georgia. Set the fastest time around this circuit. 85% the fuel limit today. And it's very sunny here at Hotlanta. Just past about 4 p.m. in sim. 100 degrees Fahrenheit, the track temp, as the cars start to make their way to the racetrack. And Andrew, as we've seen throughout the season, different approaches some have to qualifying, but how do you efficiently qualify at Atlanta is a question some may be looking to answer.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those tracks where you really have to nail every aspect. The one other thing that we want to talk about is that what we're looking at right now, the exit of pit road, especially when you're qualifying here, it's very important to nail that pit exit, and it's very bumpy down below that white line on the apron there, and you really have to hustle the car around these turns 1 and 2, and then there's a big bump just beyond that blue line there that can really pitch the cars if you're not paying attention to it. And it really requires a lot of effort, but once you're on the track, here we have I believe that is
Gabe Wood.
Gabe Wood out on track right now. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to gradually build up that speed. You can see him up in that second lane trying to use as much track as possible, as little steering input as possible, coming up to your second lap. And this is going to be the fast lap for Gabriel Wood right here. He's going to go down into turn 1 here, try and go as close to that white line as possible without really putting your tires on it. You can see he just goes out just a little bit after almost clipping that white line. And then 3 and 4 here, the exact same thing. Try and keep it as low as you possibly can through 3 and 4 without hitting that white line. Don't scrub too much speed, and then keep it nice and tight to that inside line. And that is going to be, I believe, a P1 so far for Gabe Wood, 7 thousandths of a second in front of Isaiah Dupree.
24.781 to be precise, 782 to the nearest 10,000. Dupree, Carpenter, Ron Hacker, Mike Rigney amongst the 7 who have set time so far. Many of the others, though, trying to build up for their start of laps. You see them trying to get themselves within the blue cone. And you mentioned as well the bumps on the apron. The bumps in general here at this facility are massive. In real life, the seams got excessively big, so to speak, before the repave, before it's debuted as more of a super speedway in a 1.5 mile form back earlier this year in 2022. Luis Gonzalez Nunez showing a bit of those bumps up there, nearly smacking the wall off too.
Yeah, Atlanta is one of those tracks where the best way to describe it is it has a lot of character, and that character can be friendly one instant and bite you the next. So it's definitely not a track that you can let your guard down at, and you really have to respect what the bumps can do. to your car and how it can upset it, and really be on top of your driving lines as much as you possibly can. So Luis Gonzalez Nunez that we're riding on board with here, Justin, he's really been strong so far this season, but surprisingly his qualifying hasn't been quite as powerful as his racing so far.
See, for example, Luis Gonzalez Nunez top 5 for now, though. See if that changes that statistic, but keep in mind the lowest the race winner has started in the field was Jason Galvin when it came to Lionheart IndyCar Series competition with this chassis in Season 4. He was starting in 24th that day a few years ago. Here's a look at Harden, top driver in practice. He's been mostly keeping it out of the wall this year, outside of losing the front nose. The Hard in the wall machine, looking to try and get himself some good track position, currently bottom of the board after his first lap.
Yeah, Harden has been doing a really good job so far this year, but just quickly before he comes across the start-finish line, look at who's at the start, at the top of the charts. Mike Rigney, 0.02 of a second faster than Joe Hassert. Really nice lap from Rigney.
Will that stand is the question? It does for now. A 24.804 puts Ricky Harden top 9, making near top 10 towards the edge of that mark. But one of the drivers we talked about a little bit is amongst these cars. It's Nick DeGroot you're looking at for factory-backed, defending team winners, so to speak, when it came to Robert Malechka last season. DeGroot amongst those looking to try and win this time. DeGroot showed good speed last year at this track.
Yes, of course, Newsom and Malechka no longer racing for factory backed in this series. They're over in the main Lionheart IndyCar series that does both the ovals and the road courses, but DeGroot is trying to resurrect the banner, and as you say, Justin, he messed up that badly on that final lap there, and that's going to cost him.
He still qualified top 10 from that. Despite that, Jacob Oster topped him in 5th. Michael Goodman to the top of the board, though, a 24.737. 10 seconds remaining. Gibson, Crow, Shion Jasper, Hawkins III, Matthew Short, all not setting times. But in the end, it's Michael Goodman who takes the top spot at Atlanta Motor Speedway. It's time to set the grid for the GSI Atlanta 200, presented by Next Level Racing. Drivers now making their way to the pacing line for today's starting grid, with Michael Goodman on the pole for today's action. Mike Rigney starts on the outside, 9 1,000ths back. Matt Wagner continues his strong qualifying performances, starting alongside Big Joe Hassert. Then it's Jacob Oster and Matt Taylor rounding out the top 6. Tied with Taylor in terms of times was the 7th place qualifier in Trevor Malone to the nearest 10,000th, with Craig Forsyth in 8th. Samuel Ryman, Ron Hacker, the top 10. Nick DeGroot starts 11th, while Gabriel Wood has his best start of the season for JD Esports in 12th. Tony Shallen starts 13th with AJ Musselman 14th. Zay Dupree will start 15th with Andrew Wood, middle of the pack in 16th. Chris Fowler, Jim Herrick round out the top 18 from Atlanta. 19th goes to Gary Gonzo with Ricky Harden in 20th. He tied up with Luis Gonzalez Nunez on the board, with the points leader Joe Branch deep in the field yet again in 22nd. James Watson struggled in qualifying. In practice, he'll start 23rd with Dean Mull 24th. Shane Coogan starts behind them in 25th with Paul Jenkins in 26th. The NLR Sim Racing Machine of Creighton Carter, 27th. Dakota DeMade starts in 28th position with George Zotto, along with Will Gibson, the top 30. 31st spot is the last qualifier on time, Hugo Galez. The rest of the drivers either did not set times or have EOL penalties. Jeff Shion, Vern Hawkins III, Mike Gibson, Matthew Short, Christian Jasper, and the last driver to make it to tonight's race is Sam Crow in the 70. 37 cars on the grid tonight. Vern Hawkins III, Jeff Shion with incidents from last time out. Get EOLs, they'll start at the tail. That's a look top to bottom at tonight's starting grid presented by Butt Kicker. Let's take a look at tonight's featured onboard cameras across the pack this evening. First, with the Butt Kicker on board, it's the 59 of Samuel Ryman. Sim racing is better with Butt Kicker. Visit thebuttkicker.com. Luis Nunez once again has the Sim Race 24/7 onboard cam. Visit Sim Race 24/7, where sim racing is for everyone. Gomez Sim Industries rides with Jeff Shion tonight, makers of high-end esports equipment and controls. Visit GomezSimIndustries.com. And the HyperX onboard once more is carried by the 8 of Matt Taylor. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game. Just about all set to go from Hotlanta. 133 laps up on the board for tonight's action. Partly cloudy skies with the track conditions 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Air temp 73 with the winds gusting to the northeast. That's towards the back straightaway with humidity at 66% on iRacing Day, May 15th, 2022, 4:30 p.m. in Sim. Quick keys to victory, Andrew.
Absolutely. So the first thing is make sure that you've nailed your restarts. We've already talked about how important those managing that wheel spin is going to be. Getting clean air is going to be another key. You're going to need to find that clean line, and finally having that patience in order to get your way through the field and maybe find a strategy that's going to work for you.
Competition, commitment, excitement. This is Lionheart, and this is the start of the GSI Atlanta 200 presented by Next Level Racing. We're underway from Hotlanta. Coming to the end of the first lap, Michael Goodman holds on to the race lead. The draft trying to be picked up by several, but the first driver being shuffled, Trevor Malone, who falls back to 8th. The majority of the field trying to get into a rhythm early, and some of them trying to find clean air, like for the battle for 3rd with Otster.
Yeah, Goodman really needed to get a nice start there, and he did, but Mike Rigney was the driver who didn't necessarily get the best start there for me. All the way back to P4, Joe Hassard is pressuring the back of him right now. And as you say, all these drivers now just trying to find the rhythm, trying to find that clean air, and trying to find the place that their car is going to work for the rest of this run.
Interestingly enough, Matt Wagner, if anything, is trying to line wheel to wheel so far with Michael Goodman. We've talked so much about aero wash. It's interesting how some of the lines are being taken towards that bottom group today.
This early on in the run, the draft is so important at a track like Atlanta. Before the tires give up, you really can't afford to let your nose get too far out of line, because it's very easy for the driver behind you to pounce on that and force you out of line, as we see look like Nick DeGroot trying to get to the inside of Craig Forsyth, and we got some too wide action. Gabriel Wood back in the pack as well. So as you can see, it's so easy once you maybe peak out a little bit to lose the effect of the draft and really lose that momentum that you have.
Gabriel Wood lost a bit of the top groove and lost 2 spots down the back last time. It's part of that side-by-side. Nick DeGroot feeling the same effects this time. He stays on the bottom this time. It looks like at the very least you want to stay bottom, it seems, Andrew, single file. But if you're side-by-side, it almost seems the advantage is getting to the top.
Yeah, it's wherever you can find the clean air to maintain your momentum. It's one of those things that we talk about a lot in the DW12, but it really, really is important to keep the revs up, keep yourself in that power band of the engine, and allow yourself to really roll through the corners. And that's what can allow you to keep going forward. And the tricky part is that it's not always straightforward what will let you do that, because one lap it could be that the high side is really working, but then you see what Tony Showen's doing on the inside here in front of us, and he's just letting it work on that inside. Then on the exit, that top side works again. So it's really a give and take situation here early on in the run.
See Samuel Ryman trying to poke to the bottom, for example, now, but has already lost the top groove with Ron Hacker to the outside. Put that pole off the corner, able to clear himself once again. Again, that's the battle currently for about 12th position, with the different lines forming up. 0.2 of a second still the advantage up front for Michael Goodman. Most of the drivers have been able to settle themselves out outside of Jacob Oster, who has just gotten shuffled by Big Joe Hassard up there. Samuel Ryman, keep in mind, though, is starting to build up what is looking to already be Pack 2. With all that fighting, he's nearly a second back, hence why you see that gap starting to build up on screen.
Yeah, and you mentioned Jacob Oster. It was very important that he actually got a good start for once in this race, and I think we've seen bad luck befall him a number of times when he started back in the field. Let's see what he can do now that he's in that top 5 this early on in the run. Maybe he can actually maintain it and come up with a good finish for now. And you see on screen with Ryman, he's started to close back up. So it really shows you just how much there is sort of this coming and going effect where for a few laps you can struggle, but then you cool your tires down just a little bit and it allows you to regroup, and as long as you maintain that draft, it really does let you close right on back up as Wood and Hacker go side by side lap after lap here.
Near contact, in fact, for the battle for 12. Around this grouping, about 25-2 is the name of the pace. Most of the field, in fact, in that ballpark, within a couple 100s in the early going. 34 cars separated by 6.8 seconds currently. One of them has just pulled into the pit lane. Jeff Gion has had to put his car into the lane. He was 7 seconds back last time by. He's out of the race after an incident down the front straightaway that did not bring out the caution, though. Sam Crow went through the grass. Christian Jasper nearly picked up damage. The rest of the field stays green and continues to fight.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that didn't result in a caution there, Justin. It was a spectacular incident, but somehow we stay green here. And definitely thankful that is happening, because the action on track is definitely coming fast and furious here. And no more so than right in this battle right here, and just in front of it as well, Sam Ryman and Tony Schown going side by side as well.
Yeah, this mixture of the pack definitely showing some of that lane progression you were referring to a little bit so far. Single file out for now. Michael Goodman, Munstall's still leading up front. See, though, Munstall's trying to claw their way ahead. Isaiah Dupree is at the back of this grouping now, in that red and silverish blue car. Trying to cut himself open a few lanes. Several different lanes are popping up as a result of all this. With some of the shuffling, but as we've seen, trickiness is going to be big when it comes to the positioning on the speedways. You don't want to lose the gap to the leaders, as you discussed a bit throughout the season.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be so careful in a race like this, because it's very easy to get over aggressive and try and save yourself some time, and you end up costing yourself time instead of saving yourself the time. But as you say, gap control, it's very, very important on a race like this, especially one where you get so much tire wear. You want to make sure that you're really, here's the replay of what happened, and you see just a violent impact here for Jeff Xiong, and I'm not sure how we did not have a caution out of that, Justin.
Crow just had to pit because he cut that grass. He's also slow on the apron, though. Crow has picked up, I think, some more damage trying to get out of the lane. He does have side pod damage. He's chugging along. He was involved in the incident. We stay green. Dakota DeMade and George Anzotto also just had to pit. They were 5 seconds back last time by, so something's happened to the both of them. That just happened as we showed the replay, I think, in the battle for 25th on the racetrack.
Yeah, so that was...
and a lap car nearly just hit the leaders. Shane Coogan nearly came up and hit the race leaders coming up the track.
What in the world is going on here, Justin? So what happened with George Anzaldo is that he got into the back of, I believe that might have been Gary Godso at the back of the field, and then he got into the wall coming off a 2. Dakota DeMade checked up and got into the inside wall. And then, as you saw there, we nearly had disaster with the leaders here and a lap car coming out of pit lane again. So it is all breaking loose here in front of us right now.
Still, though, in the mixture of things, because in part with that situation with Coogan, it appears, the buffer is built up. Here's the incident we're referring to. Watch turn 2. And then you see the spin down to the bottom. That was DeMade spinning back up. That, again, did not bring out the caution as it stayed below the apron. And as a result, Coogan, DeMade, and Zotto are all off the circuit from that. As a result, 29 cars still in the lead pack after what was 34 cars at one point early.
Yeah, the attrition is already starting to pile up, and it's one of those things where you really have to be mindful of what the tires are giving you, and that's one of the areas you just saw there that can really go first, is your ability to judge the gaps coming off of these turns. And I think that's what you saw there happen, was a little bit of just the tires are getting old, and you have to avoid doing stuff like we just saw Joe Hazard do, which is putting 2 tires below that white line and nearly getting into, I believe that was the 8 car of Matt Taylor on the outside.
You definitely don't want to go below that white line because it usually ends up collecting the field. I've done that once. Trust me, people get mad. And it's also not the best line because it immediately, if you clip that apron to the point of the transition around that seam, you kick your car back up the track by at least half a length.
Yeah, and you saw exactly that with Joe Hasser. He went up almost into the side of Matt Taylor, and I'm sure that both he and Taylor had a big sigh of relief after they managed to avoid contact. And I've done that as well, Justin, and it definitely takes you a couple of laps to really sort of gather yourself up after you have a heart in your throat moment like that.
This is one of the best runs, I will say, when it comes to Big Joe Hasser on the season, because he's had great speed this campaign, don't get me wrong. He's got a top 5 for a reason. However, it's been about keeping himself clean in fights such as this one. He's 17th in the point standings entering today.
And this is one of the tracks that really sort of plays to Joe Hassert's strengths as a driver. He's definitely one that is one of those hard charging type drivers, but he also really understands how to let the car roll through a corner well. And you really have to have a really good understanding of when to lift and when not to lift at a track like Atlanta. So this is one of those tracks where he's just always been one of his stronger tracks. And it's really showing, I think, here today.
Still trying to find a way around Mike Rigney. Rigney with a little bit of a lift on the higher groove. Big Joe Hasser can't get himself to the inside, though. Try and continue to claw ahead. Matt Taylor, by the way, leading this little train starting to form up. Taylor +3 on the night so far, and an impressive run when it comes to the 8 machine once again.
We've seen this time and time again from Matt Taylor, especially when he starts near the front of this field. He doesn't waste any time getting up towards the front, and today is no different. He is definitely on the march here and seems to have a lot of speed in that number 8 car, but Matt Wagner and Michael Goodman up in front, they're just eking out ever so much in front of Taylor lap after lap. But really the battle here is Rigney, Taylor, and Fowler at the front, but back in the field a little bit farther. We've talked about them several times already, but this has really been, they've been going at each other lap after lap. Nick DeGroot, Tony Schown, Trevor Malone's in there, Craig Forsyth, Andrew Woods in there, Sam Ryman. They just haven't left each other alone, Justin.
Tony Schown in particular really trying to continue to claw his way ahead, because for Tony Schown, we hit upon this just about every single week so far. It's been a campaign where he's had the speed. He's been inside the top 5 every round, but he has had a big crash in each of every round so far. That's why Tony Schown very low in the standings entering today, 36 in the standings.
The cartoon anvil just will not leave Tony Schown alone so far this year. He's done virtually nothing wrong as well in most of those incidents. There may be 1 or 2 where he could have chosen slightly differently, but several of them were just simply getting collected in other people's messes. So definitely not the start that Tony Schown wanted, and he is definitely showing a will to try and get the monkey off his back, so to speak. But up front here, Chris Fowler's gotten around Joe Hasser, and he's really working over Mike Rigney hard right now.
Chris Fowler is the biggest mover in this race, mind you. Already, if he can complete this pass, 13 spots up from where he qualified. No one else has been able to gain more than 8 spots, and those drivers who gained 8 are in 25th and 27th respectively. Fowler tries to give a late arc to Mike Rigney to try and hold on to 4th and does.
It's been an electric drive so far from Chris Fowler. He has made short work of everyone he's been around, and you saw him nearly get into Rigney on the outside there, but that's really what you have to do this late in the run to get the momentum there. You really need to use as much as the driver on the outside is giving you into these corners in order to get that nice big arc going, and Rigney gave him just enough in order for them to get through that no harm, no foul. So move Chris Fowler up into 4th position, and he's got his eyes already set on Matt Taylor in 3rd.
Remember, he had a very strong stint of speed in the summertime, trying to build on it now in the springtime this year. Here's a look at Rigney once again. And Rigney as well, keep in mind, has been amongst those who have been the antithesis of some of the strategy playing out this year, but also consistency. In the opening rounds of the campaign, he's finished in the top 10 twice so far. Top 10 in the standings for a reason in what has been a topsy-turvy beginning of the year, where consistency has been hard to come by for just about everybody.
And really, Rigney's signature in this series has always been his consistency. He's one of those drivers who most of the time he actually doesn't qualify particularly well, and he uses that consistency and that strategy to move himself up through the field. It's really interesting to see what he's doing so far in this race, where he actually doesn't have to move himself forward with strategy. He started at the front, and he's doing a good job staying right up near that front in 5th place.
Speaking of doing a good job to stay up near that front of Michael Goodman, who's still the leader, is Matt Wagner. Now reeled in by Matt Taylor as well. We've talked a lot about the praise of Matt Wagner with the qualifying speed this season. Very quick, has started on the pole several times this campaign. It's just been a matter of closing out for Wagner, still within 4/10 though, within reach of the 99, who's led them all so far.
And really where Wagner's fallen so short so far this year has been on strategy, Justin. He's had the speed, and he's led a vast majority of the laps in a couple of the races so far, but he hasn't been able to put it away. And it all comes down to maybe not thinking through the race nearly enough to make that strategy work, because too often he's found himself on the back foot, having to pit early, and just using too much fuel too early on in the run. So I think here today, he's maybe turning over a little bit of a new leaf and trying to let Michael Goodman lead this race, maybe save some fuel and see what happens from a strategy perspective to keep himself in the fight rather than taking himself out of it.
Keep in mind, the strategy window is estimated to be opening in the next few laps for those looking to try and figure things out. It's 41 to 43, the estimates for the stints today. However, when you add things up, the furthest mark on that estimate, 43, 43, 43, you get to 4 laps to go. Pretty certain fuel saving will be critical like last year.
Absolutely, particularly if we don't get very many cautions, and so far we have been green so far, but we were just talking about Matt Wagner, Justin. He just lost 2 positions in 1 lap. Matt Taylor and Chris Fowler are around the number 3 car.
Matt Wagner lost the bottom in turn 1. Wasn't able to keep the bottom for turn 3. Immediately drops 2 spots in 2 sets of corners. Chris Fowler is looking for second now. He tries to get some clean air, hits a bit of the bumps though through turns 3 and 4.
If there's one car that's not saving right now, it is Chris Fowler. He is going foot to the floor here and looking to try and get as far up as he can. And right now, it looks like the only thing that's going to limit him is when he gets into that first position here, because he has got a rocket ship up underneath him.
And keep in mind, these 4 have all broken the draft from Mike Rigney and the rest of the leaders. Following on board from the nose cone, this is Fowler for Team Race for Sunset. And keep in mind, it's not rare to see him really push hard in the opening stints and not really go for the saving mileage portion of the strategies. He likes to make passes.
Fowler is definitely one of those drivers who's the type of driver who needs to concentrate on the next target and the next person in front of him, and he really thrives off moving through the field like he has so far today. So again, not surprised by anything that's happening here so far, but what is surprising me is just how well Mike Goodman has been able to stay out front and lead this race. But Matt Taylor not making it easy for him anymore. It looks like Taylor might want to take a shot at this lead right now.
Pit window just opened up. Michael Goodman's called on the radio. He's pitting this time. He will bend the knee for Matt Taylor to take the lead. There goes Goodman on into the pit lane. Keep in mind, the speed limit here at this track, 50 miles per hour, and it's a very treacherous entry on top of things with that banking differential and that short run to the commitment cone. Goodman got in safely. He and Crispin Jasper amongst those in, along with Mike Gibson, Hugo Galvez, expecting the leaders coming in, this time by on Ford.
Yeah, so this is really when we're going to see who's going to try some strategy and who's not here. We have a number of drivers on pit lane, but we also see a number of drivers. Oh, caution is out in the middle of the pit cycle.
It's on the entry. Remember that discussion just moments ago. Luis Gonzalez Nunez is upside down in the grass. He is tangled with Gabriel Wood for the first caution of the day. Ricky Harden also collected for yellow number 1 of the night.
Oh my, and this is exactly what Michael Goodman could not have afforded to have happen. It has happened to him. So this is going to be disastrous for all those cars that were on pit lane there. They will likely be going a full lap down here. So here's the replay. Luis Gonzalez Nunez trying to slow down to get on the pit lane. Sees Gabriel Wood coming on the inside, and then Wood at the same time Luis Gonzalez Nunez tries to miss it. Wood goes up the track, and then Harden straight into the back of them. I'm not sure where Ricky was going there, but that was definitely not the target that he wanted to fixate on.
So we're under caution for the first time after a couple incidents during the green flag run. It's worth noting Luis Gonzalez Nunez indicated over the radio and on the text version of the chat for drivers in sim that he was pitting about 3/4 of a lap before that mark. And here comes everyone in turn. The only race leader who pit, mind you, was Michael Goodman, and this is not good if you're the 99. He was a lap down at the time of the caution. All the track position is gone.
Oh, and Andrew Wood spins in pit lane.
Oh boy, more troubles on the entry. Wood, amongst those going around, he is backwards down the pit lane. He's in the middle of the access, trying to find a way to get to his box. Race off the pit lane is Fowler and Taylor. With the edge going, it appears that time maybe to Fowler. In fact, to Taylor at the edge of the commitment cone. But my goodness, what a busy sequence.
I almost don't know what to say with the Andrew Wood deal there. He was pointed absolutely backwards here. It looks like Tony Schowen right behind him. Wood tries to get into his pit stall, but I think it almost looked to me like Wood didn't realize quite where his pit box was, and he slowed down in the fast lane. Tony Schowen had no way of knowing where Wood was going to pull into the pits, and he gets into the back of Wood, spins him around, and that's going to put Wood all the way at the back end of this train here. But the big loser, as you mentioned before, Michael Goodman, just nothing that he could do with that caution coming out when it did.
Yeah, here's another look, man. Hard contact, and Wood goes around. So both drivers with the last name Wood with big troubles throughout this caution sequence. And things are getting intriguing even more so because Michael Goodman is amongst those one lap down. Crispin Jasper needs to get around the 99. They're amongst those trying to sort it themselves out to try and get the lap back.
It is absolute chaos right here, and they need to get this sorted out soon, or else they're not going to get the proper wave around going. So if that happens, then it could be disastrous for Michael Goodman.
They're still trying to sort themselves out, it looks like, to figure out who's supposed to be up there. And it looks like they finally sorted things out with Matt Wagner. Possibly, we'll see.
But it looks like, Justin,
wow.
Jasper and Goodman are behind the leaders, so they will not get a wave around here.
Were they that far back as a result, you think, Andrew? Were they did not get positioned out when they came into the pits, maybe?
Yeah, if they didn't get to that blend line before the leaders exited pit lane, then that could definitely have trapped them one lap down here.
This has just went upside down for Michael Goodman. He is now amongst those trapped one lap down as a result. He will not get the wave, it looks like. The drivers who will Gibson, Vern Hawkins III, Hugo Galles. One to go into the restart. Matt Taylor, Chris Fowler, Matt Wagner, Mike Rigney, Big Joe Hasser, the top 5. Forsyth, Oster, Malone, DeGroot, Ryman, now the top 10. Oh boy. And by the way, there's still another couple pit stops estimated.
Yeah, this is far from over here, and so I think the most interesting thing is, what is Michael Goodman going to do on this restart? We know that he's led this race for basically since the green flag fell. Now he finds himself one lap down. Can he fight his way back through these 4 or 5 cars back into the lead of the race and maybe put himself in position for a lucky caution to come out?
It's been a very wild one, to say the very least, so far. Attrition has continued to build when it comes to Atlanta. As to be expected when it comes to the fastest track in the South, one of the trickiest circuits on the schedule for a reason. It's Taylor, Fowler, Wagner, top 3. Tire spin, remember, prevalent. Jasper already moving towards the inside for the restart. Green flag is out, back underway, no tire spin. .86 laps to go this time around, coming to 85. And already Matt Taylor tries to run away, but Chris Fowler tries to catch up. Fowler tries outside. Rest of the field settles themselves down to turn 3.
Really nice orderly restart there. This was exactly the type of restart that Matt Taylor and Chris Fowler really wanted to see. But the big positive there was Michael Goodman. He had the lap car of Christian Jasper get out of his way, and it's allowed him to break away with the top 3 here. And they're trying to get a little bit of a gap going between themselves and Mike Rigney and Joe Hassert. But it's definitely step 1 for Michael Goodman has gone well. Now it's step 2, getting around Matt Wagner. He's up into the 3rd in line, but still 1 lap down.
Goodman, 25th position on circuit, keep in mind, is the quickest car in this line now. Tries the very bottom, now tries the very top to try and get the lucky position back. Trying to get himself to the tail of that lead lap. Goes for the cross to the inside of 2nd place. Taylor now stays up high. Goodman tries to wrap the bottom. Goodman to get his lap back. Does get it back as Matt Taylor lets him by.
My goodness, that 99 car does look strong, doesn't it? But another car that's looking strong right now, Joe Hassert, he's around Mike Rigney into 4th position, and he's looking at the back of Matt Wagner. So this battle here is far from over right now.
Here's my biggest thing. How will this impact the battle for the lead in general behind Goodman now that the leader has no fresh air compared to before? Here's the Transcendent Motorsports machine. So far, no peaks yet for the 11 machine in this line. Right now, the drivers turning some of their quickest laps of the race in the 24.9s.
Well, and keep in mind as well, Justin, that we were right on that outside window of a fuel window to potentially get us to the end of the race. So all those drivers that had to come down pit lane that last time by, they're probably looking to stretch these next couple of runs as long as they possibly can. So if I'm Matt Taylor, it's probably a good strategic move if I can get Michael Goodman into the lead of this race and follow along and maybe save some fuel right behind that 99 car.
It's worth noting that when we took the green flag, it was right down the middle of the estimated top of the window, 43 if you go for the 1 stop. However, as we've seen, some drivers could only get to around 40 to 41 if they were leading the pack in the draft. Much more easier, as we've seen, with some of the drivers who were able to stretch it prior to the caution flag. We'll see if that becomes a major factor this time. Fowler, though, trying to become a major factor for the race lead. Still can't build up the run to get around the 8 quite yet.
Yeah, and this is when the chess moves really start to begin, especially for these top 10 drivers. You have to be so careful because you really want to save fuel and save your tires as much as you possibly can, but at the same time, especially if you're in the back half of the top 10, you can't afford to just sit still here. You have to try and find ways around some of these competitors in order to position yourself well for this final run, for the final run to the flag. So you look at like Trevor Malone, he is working all over the back of Craig Forsyth right now.
See how high, in fact, Trevor Malone is starting to get a little bit in that blue and black machine. Trying to still work his way towards the middle line once more to shuffle things about as Jacob Oster and company try to settle things down with Nick DeGroot.
And look who's right behind Oster and DeGroot. Sam Ryman has become part of this 10-car breakaway. There's about a second back to Ron Hacker, but he is latched on to the back end of this leading pack once again. And this is exactly the type of race we've come to expect from Sam Ryman so far this year, Justin.
He's been able to get himself solid positioning in the standings, mind you, on just pure survival, it seems. You see with the butt kicker on board, able to hold on to the 10th position right now. He's usually not been toward this mark to the final 4th of the race. Today, though, has been different. He had the track position early. He's kept the track position till now.
Yeah, and that's really where I've seen the improvement year over year from Sam Ryman. He's always been good at the strategy. He's always been good at taking care of his car and bringing home the car in one piece, as long as he's not collected in someone else's mess. But what he hasn't been good on until this year is really getting the track position right and really marrying the track position with the strategy well. This year, he really seems to have taken a step forward in that department, and this is just further proof of it with a 10th place on lap 60 of this race so far.
Coming up to lap 60, in fact. Looking much more tamer, we'll say, compared to the start, as the track conditions start to cool down. It's already dropped 3 degrees Fahrenheit, the track temperature, per the estimates, and that is expected to potentially go down more as we approach the later evening. Again, -3 Fahrenheit so far.
Yeah, and these drivers will take every last degree that they can get in terms of track temperature, because we saw just how much it did start to string out as we watch Trevor Malone get very high after taking a getting around Craig Forsyth there. He nearly got into the wall, but he just was able to keep it out of it. But Malone is another one of those drivers who is just looking to try and position himself well for these final few runs to the checkered flag here. And he knows that he needs to get a little bit farther up in this draft pack, and he's looking to make a move now on Mike Rigney as well.
See another peak once again from Malone after the close call at the last corner we've seen in the backdrop for Forsyth. Malone starting to try and make some cuts ahead, partly because some of these cars are starting to lose a bit of the grip to the back end of Joe Hassard, even more so to the back end of Matt Wagner. Looking like some of that urgency popping on up. But it is thought about, though, where for some, they may think fourth on back may be the best spot to be on the fuel strat.
And one of the things that you see with this sort of formation flying that we've seen through the top 10 so far, where they're all in a line, is it does tend to use up your tires a little bit more, particularly if you're in that fourth or fifth position like Joe Hassard is right now. So that could be a worry if I'm Joe Hassard, is yes, I'm getting a lot of fuel saving by staying behind Matt Wagner here, but I'm also using up my tires a lot, and it's allowing the likes of Mike Rigney, Trevor Malone, Craig Forsyth to really start to put pressure on the back of that 11 car.
See Trevor Malone again building up on our run. He's been trying to bank it off turn 4 a couple times. Tries to use the high side this time to build up the run for the back. This work for the 69. Yes, indeed. Rigney nearly gets contact with him. 0-0. Once again up high, a little bit of a higher arc again for Malone. Rigney again drops back, this time to 6th.
Classic overrunner move there from Trevor Malone, and just like that, the 69 car is up to 5th position. And again, this is exactly what you need to do if you're Trevor Malone. Is he was back in the back half of the top 10 suddenly, all the way up to 5th, and this is all about positioning himself properly for that final run to the checkered flag. Because if you're not up and near the sharp end of this pack, you're never going to be able to make up enough positions quickly enough towards the end of this race, as Nick DeGroot and Jacob Oster are starting to swarm over Craig Forsyth right now.
Yeah, in fact, they've split themselves apart a little bit. DeGroot is now the car trailing Forsyth. Oster, the car in front, has a bit of a checkup. DeGroot trying to peek to the outside. The door slammed shut, however. One thing you have to consider, 40 driver has played a lot of 40 chess, as we've referred to. Both races, he took some bold strategy calls to get there and was able to prove that he had the speed to stay there and make the strategy work. Pocono was a big example, the season opener even bigger of one.
Absolutely. When it comes to strategy, I definitely wouldn't put anyone on a higher tier than Craig Forsyth right now. He has been on point so far this year, and it's resulted in those 2 wins that you mentioned. So definitely the 4D chess is in full effect, and I think that it's probably in full effect right now. He's doing everything he can to just maintain his position as DeGroot finally does get around Forsyth here. But I think what Forsyth is doing is he's doing whatever it takes to get as much fuel economy as he can and set himself up for a full fuel run to the end if he can possibly manage it.
Especially with that give and take, it seems. Here's Paul Jenkins in the heart of that pack right now, around 15th. That was Dean Wall he was trying to pass. James Watson, give him credit. Usually more so known when it comes to road course racing, a little bit more so on the dirt side. Keeping himself clean tonight in that yellow, pink, and tealish green machine. Following along back some of the cars. Speaking of cars trying to make more passes, Samuel Ryman makes one on Craig Forsyth. Forsyth looks to be in a massive fuel save mode, if anything.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely what's going on right now is Forsyth. He just is doing whatever it takes to make the fuel numbers that he's got and gain that little bit of an advantage, because we've seen, especially at Homestead, where he got that advantage and he was able to really use the extra fuel to his advantage, to especially late in the run, to make the moves that he needed. As Ron Hacker now looking to the inside of Craig Forsyth. So Forsyth continues to fall now just to the outside of the top 10. So this is sort of the opposite strategy to Trevor Malone, where Trevor Malone's trying to go forward. Forsyth, he's just taking whatever the fuel number gives him at this point.
This could be very intriguing if this works out. But keep in mind, he's losing plenty of track position. He was as high as once the top 5, about a second so back. He's now 3.3 seconds back of the race leader, Matt Taylor, who has stayed in line lockstep with Goodman being able to save a bit. Speaking of drivers swapping a bit, you see the factory back machines in the pylon have swapped. De Groot is now leading that group with Oster just up the pack here, but they are trying to keep up with Mike Rigney and Trevor Malone. They're nearly a second back now after that battling they had for a little bit before Forsyth backed it off.
Yeah, and I think Oster's tires were starting to go off just a little bit, and that's what's prompted them to swap these positions here, as Nick de Groot just looks to be a little bit faster at this stage of the run. But it's really important that you work really well with your teammates, and it's really good to see Oster and de Groot working well so far in this race. And the third teammate, AJ Musselman, is also in 13th position. So we've talked about all the trials and tribulations of factory back so far. This is one race where they're, so far at least, doing a really good job of just having a nice consistent run.
Lots to talk about, but the next window is approaching within the next 15 laps from now. From Atlanta Motor Speedway, more coverage of the GSI Atlanta 200 presented by Next Level Racing is coming up right around the corner. You're watching RaceSpot TV and ESTV for coverage of the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by Moser Racing.
With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
Welcome back to Atlanta Motor Speedway for more coverage of the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by Moser Racing and the GSI Atlanta 200 presented by Next Level Racing. Justin Prince, Andrew Kinsella with you along with producer Tyler Maxson as the speed continues to build up around Atlanta Motor Speedway. Drivers approaching the second hit window of the race with Matt Taylor, Chris Fowler, Matt Wagner, Big Joe Hassard, Trevor Malone, Mike Rigney, all leading the main group on track. The top 6 have broken away from Nick de Groot on back.
Yeah, and that was so important for that top 6 to once again break away here. It's really made it that much more difficult for the likes of de Groot, Oster, and then Ryman, Hacker, and Forsyth behind him to really not only catch back up, but also maintain the fuel number if you're Nick de Groot and Jacob Oster. And we've seen them switch back and forth a number of times to try and continue to save as much as they possibly can here, because as you mentioned, the fuel window quickly coming up on us, but this is really going to be getting down to crunch time. If we can get to lap 90, if you're any one of these cars on the lead lap right now, then that's going to be the indication that they can make it on fuel just fine from there. Any lap before lap 90, it's going to be very, very difficult for these drivers.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at some of the drivers, including today's driver profile with Tony Shallen, presented by Moser Racing. We talked about his struggles this season, but keep in mind, throughout his time in the Speedway Series, he'll have to dodge, trying to avoid cars on his 23rd start. He avoids the trouble and keeps himself going as we're under caution.
Oh my, that was so that was Vern Hawkins the third there, getting into it. Vern Hawkins was a lap down here, and it looks like that was, who was that on the outside of him there?
That was Vern Hawkins the third. He just got a warning 5 laps ago to respect the race leaders. He hit the wall, bounced off Watson, and he collects a few cars.
Yeah, this was definitely not the type of thing that we needed to see from Vern Hawkins here. To be honest, it was just carelessness. It was just him not probably not realizing where he was on the straight. Probably was trying to look at a fuel number or gauge where Watson was beside him. Lost track of where he was on the track, and then it's unfortunately ended Watson's day and could definitely affect a number of other drivers as well.
Pit stop's underway, and now it really becomes a fuel mileage race.
And we have a car in the infield right now, Justin.
Dupree has gone in the grass. What happened to the 98 for that to happen? I think he may have just locked it up.
Yeah, that was on pit entry, Justin, and I think that he might have missed his pit limiter.
He's still in the grass. Now he comes in. Race off the lane.
Go ahead, Justin.
I was about to say, Taylor wins the race. Gonzo, by the way, stayed out to get a point. Pit lane has been an adventure. Dupree, by the way, just found his way out of the box finally.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what happened with Dupree. It's one of two things. It was either he missed hitting his pit limiter, jumped back on the brakes again, and then you can see he just lit up the rear of the car, and it just immediately turned right. And you could see, even as he was going down pit lane, just how unstable these cars are at low speeds. But meanwhile, the one person who really, really, really enjoyed that caution coming out right now, Michael Goodman, back on the lead lap, Justin.
That's the big thing. 24th position, tail end of the lead lap. But now it's the matter of gaining those spots. And, oh, by the way, we're outside the estimated window by 4 laps still. This time by. So in other words, it's going to be difficult to cut yourself through the pack to be able to get the track position and in turn in the conversation. Here's the interesting thing. Gonzo did not come in that time. If he does not come in, he pinches Christian Jasper a lap down, for one. But two, and this is the bigger thing, he would have to come in 3 to 5 laps.
Yeah, very surprising strategy from Gary Godso, because even if everyone on track can't make it right now, he's going to give up basically a lap and a half for a very large portion of the run. So any caution is going to be disastrous for Gary Godso. But one thing that I wanted to mention, guess who just came down pit lane to top off? That's Michael Goodman. And we're going back to green very, very close to that window. So it might just be, from a disastrous pit strategy at the beginning of this race, Michael Goodman could be in the catbird seat on strategy in terms of making it on fuel from here.
It's going to be very wild, I think, to say the very least, from this point. Again, at the front, it's Godso, who looks to be electing to maybe peel off this time. There's a risk to that, where if the pit lane is closed for him, that is a green flag penalty, potentially, that he'll have to serve. He does come in regardless of that risk, though. Matt Taylor now comes to the race lead. Still get themselves to signal this time by. Followed by Chris Fowler, Matt Wagner, Big Joe Hassert, Trevor Malone, the top 5. Rigney DeGroot, Oster Ryman, Forsyth, now the top 10. And now it gets intriguing because they have to stretch the gas tanks, Andrew.
Yeah, and it's all about who has the lightest right foot in the field, and Goodman coming down just one more time to top up, and a number of drivers, in fact, coming down and topping up here, as you mentioned. So this is really touch and go for a lot of drivers here, and it's going to be interesting to see who does it with their right foot and who just decides, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to try and see what happens here in just going flat out. So there's going to be a number of different calls, number of different approaches to this. I think Goodman and a few others here at the back end of this field, though, definitely made the right strategy call topping off here.
45 laps to go from Atlanta Motor Speedway. And some drivers up the front still trying to fight for the first victories of the campaign, mind you. Will this be the day for drivers like Taylor and company? Green flag is out, back underway. Matt Taylor nice and clean. Looks to pull off and away and try and secure things. A little bit of shuffling in the back, and there is Hugo Gallas electing to come into the green flag as well.
Interesting call from Hugo Gallas there, but that definitely does put him right in that range to make it. So he'll have a little bit less fuel saving, but on the flip side, even though these cars are just getting up to speed right now, Justin, they're still going to be well at full speed, and he's going to be a lap down here just after getting his lap back. So a little bit puzzling for me from Gallas.
Here's a look at the HyperX on board. Taylor having to fight off Chris Fowler, though, as the clouds come over the track. The intensity level still remains ever so present. Fowler right to the rear wing. Tries to get himself a pole off of turn 4. Can he get himself a run towards the outside? Taylor goes defensive.
And there's no chance that either Taylor or Fowler right now are saving anything, and they're certainly not going to be able to save enough fuel running the way that they are right now. So they've already made their strategy call at this point, Justin. They're going as fast as they possibly can. They're bringing Matt Wagner and Joe Hassard along with them.
Especially keep in mind, several are not saving either. Trevor Malone, Mike Rigney, Greg Forsythe, last time by, set their fastest laps of the race that time around. Matt Taylor just set his personal best up at the point. One driver trying to peek their way to the outside is Jacob Oster. Contact with Rigney. Both of them come out unscathed. Here comes DeGroot.
Really dicey stuff here at the front of this field. You can definitely tell that some of these drivers are just very anxious to get going here, none more so than the factory back drivers. This is their best shot at having a solid finish so far this year. They've had absolutely disastrous luck so far, but particularly Oster and DeGroot, they're looking very, very strong here.
Still trying to settle things to the inside, Rigney. Not looking to give this up. Keep in mind, drivers have struggled to maintain defensive on the bottom. There goes the pole. There goes a bit of a slow up, though. Forsythe also joins the fray, hoping to keep the momentum going up top. Rigney trying to continue to make it roll on the bottom, all while Oster trying to build the top line formation with Malone closing the door.
And we've seen Malone on the outside, but it looks like Oster's trying to beat him at his own game here and really make that very, very outside work for him. And he's doing a good job of it so far, but he just isn't quite able to get enough momentum to get around Trevor Malone as they get very close coming into turn 1 here.
Bit of smoke, by the way, around the racetrack. That involves one driver with some engine problems. We stay green regardless. Caution now does come out.
Big crash in turn 4.
It's Dupree, turns 1 and 2, in fact. Isaiah Dupree has gone around. There goes the strategy, but there goes Dupree's race in his front wing. Caution out. Gary Godso and Jim Herrick have also just gotten into trouble.
And I believe that with Herrick and Godso might have been the same incident as Dupree. It was a big, big crash, and it happened right in front of Michael Goodman as well. You can see Goodman just barely misses that there. And it was Dupree and I believe that's Jim Herrick on his inside here. They just come together coming through turn 1. Dupree turns down just a little bit too much. And then Godso nowhere to go, and Goodman misses it by inches, Justin.
Goodman holds on in 18th, all while some drivers ride the top of the safer barrier. But this makes it a bit easier on the fuel numbers, mind you. Who elects to top off? Taylor, Fowler, Hassard, Malone amongst them. Wagner, Oster, DeGroot amongst those keeping the track position, though.
Yeah, I kind of like this call from Oster, and DeGroot, if they can make their fuel number work from here, maybe they're thinking one more caution and we're good type of thing, then this could be the track position that they need. But I think they definitely will need a little bit of help here still. The person that surprised me coming down pit lane is Michael Goodman. If I were Goodman, I would have definitely stayed out because I probably would have been just fine on fuel. So it does surprise me just a little bit to see him on pit lane here.
He topped off a couple times indeed, but he doesn't have the track position, which he only loses one spot as a top off. He's now in 19th for reference, but amongst those staying out, Wagner, Oster, DeGroot. Here's a look one more time. And up in the air and onto the safer barrier goes the 40.
Wild ride from that 40 car, Jim Herrick. But to your point with Michael Goodman, yes, he didn't lose anything, but the bigger problem is that he didn't gain anything. You look at Joe Branch, and he gained, I think it was about 7 positions there just by staying out. Goodman, he loses 1 position. Yes, he's good on fuel here, but he doesn't have that track position mired back in the low teens here.
Remember, he was also very close to the incident, so if you picked up wing damage, even marginal, you at least would want to make sure, too. That is a thought you might have come up.
That is a fair point, and that's where having a spotter like we see some of these drivers here have, comes in very handy to have someone on your box that can inspect your car and tell you whether you have damage or not.
So trying to sort things out for some of the drivers. Wagner, Oster, DeGroot, Ryman, Branch, Musselman, Andrew Wood, Tony Shallen, Mole, Short, all stayed out this caution flag. So the whole top 10, everyone else topped off. They are 11th on back except for one driver in that grouping, 22nd Hugo Gallas, who is amongst those who is still 1 lap down as a result here. And keep in mind, he had been at one point back in the lead lap, then had to pit immediately into the pit lane on one of the restarts. So a tough run for the 84. But for Matt Wagner, big test for him. If he can try and hold on here, big chance to swing the momentum back in the way of the 9 machine if you're Jacob Oster.
And for Wagner, this is once again, he's going to have to try and find a way to lead the race while saving fuel. And he hasn't been too successful at that so far this year, Justin. But is this the race where he sort of figures out the fuel strategy and it comes good for him? Or is this the race where he once again throws away a potential victory because he just didn't get it right? But those factory back cars, they've gone all in on this strategy. AJ Musselman, their teammate, now in 6th as well, so they certainly seem confident that they can make this stretch strategy work for them.
Let's get ourselves just about all set to go. The lights are out. Once those topping off this caution flag are those who are laps down, and Gallas and Gibson, everybody else maintaining on the circuit. Now it's also going to be interesting. Will the drivers in the top 10 be able to stretch it? With some of the pace laps here, they are really close on that margin as a result. Ought to be a thrower of a finish, to say the very least, Andrew.
Absolutely. I think that we're going to see those drivers on those fresh tires with full fuel. They'll be coming up as fast as they possibly can. And these drivers up here, they're going to do everything they can to defend. But will they have enough fuel? That is the major question here, Justin.
iRacing pace car drops itself off. Green flag waves up at the stand. Off and away we go. No tire spin once more. Very clean on the launches throughout the day, as Matt Wagner tries to seize the day and seize forward from the race lead. Looking at some of the battles starting to form up. Samuel Ryman, Joe Branch for 4th. Joe Branch, a huge cut to the left side, gets the inside.
Branch knows that this is, again, all about positioning, and he's got to do everything that he can to get around the people that he sees as the biggest threat. And Ryman, we know, is really, really good on fuel, but I don't put anything past Joe Branch in terms of fuel saving. So if one of these drivers can make it, Joe Branch is definitely near the top of my list. But AJ Musselman, now looking to the outside of both of them, he's looking really fast as well.
How about AJ Musselman? Indeed, he's been quick throughout the day, top 15 for the most part. He has not really had the luck go his way for much of his time in Lionheart. This is one of his best runs in a long time. 23rd in the standings entering today. Trying to keep himself amongst the top 5 now, his best track position here tonight.
And meanwhile, Justin, the top 8 have started to break away. Matt Taylor has got around 2 people. He is the top driver of those who pitted. But the key thing for Taylor, though, is he is a full second back from that 8th place of Tony Schowen right now.
Oh, and something's gone to Big Joe Hassard. He has dunked into the pit lane. The 11 has just came on down. He was battling for 15th and had contact with the 00 of Mike Rigney. No caution, we stay green. So one of the contenders who topped off is out of contention as Joe Branch tries to hold off Andrew Wood.
Disaster for Joe Hassard, but it is all at the front of the field right now. Andrew Wood, another driver who's looking very strong, and that one I'm gonna have to say that Mike Rigney just stayed up the track just a little bit too much, and Hassard nearly got rear-ended by Michael Goodman there. So Goodman has been in the thick of almost every piece of action so far on this track.
Goodman is still going, keep in mind, in 19th, albeit he's nearly hit Paul Jenkins a couple times down the back. Here's a look at the Hornet's Nest still. Tony Schowen, where did he come from? He's trying to battle for 4th. He tries to keep it clean in the later stages. Can't get the run fully, though, as he backs off and lets Branch back in the line.
And, of course, Schowen and Branch are teammates, so there will be a little bit of cooperation here between them, and they'll certainly be doing everything they can to try and keep AJ Musselman from getting in contact with his 2 teammates right in front of them as well. So definitely a team game up here, and right behind that team game, we've got a Hornet's Nest full of cars. What a power move there from AJ Musselman around the outside of turn 2.
2 wide, a couple rows deep with some of the drivers pushing. Here comes Fowler on some of the fresh tires. He's the first on that strategy, looking to take advantage. He clears 1 car, goes side by side now with another. Schowen tries to keep it up top. Fowler jumps up to 6th position once again. As he's forced to check up a bit, there goes the power back.
We saw early on in this race, Justin, that there was no driver better at getting through the field than Chris Fowler, and he's proved it once again. He's gotten past not only the drivers on this alternate strategy at the front, but he's also been toe-to-toe with Matt Taylor and gotten around him as well. So definitely Fowler is looking very, very racy right now, and if I'm Matt Wagner, Jacob Oster, I'd be very, very scared if I started to see Chris Fowler getting further away as we look to go 3 wide into turn 3 here, Justin.
Branch into the inside. Now gets shuffled to that line with Taylor outside, with Fowler cutting to the very, very bottom. Branch shuffled back by 3 different cars. Contact! Wood and Fowler. They spin to turn 1 to the inside, down on the grass. Fowler tries to save it on the apron. Caution waves for Wood as Fowler still tries to straighten in and out.
Oh my goodness. And just like that, everything changes once again here, Justin. Contact between Wood and Fowler on the front straightaway, and I gotta say, this one is definitely, I hate to say it, but a little bit more on Fowler. It does look like there was a little bit of air in between the 2 cars, but at the same time, Fowler was just trying to cut those margins just a little bit too fine there. I don't think he was anticipating Wood coming down and trying to stay in that draft the way he was, and just an unfortunate incident there.
That brings us back under caution, and Fowler's chances go up right there as a result of the incident. 23 to go this time. Wood, Fowler getting the worst of it. Big Joe Hassard has also pulled his car behind the wall. He's done for the night as well. That will regroup all the drivers and take some of the fuel strategy out and make sure drivers can for sure make it up. Outside of a couple who are taking a little bit of a pit stop here. Ryman was in the top 11. He elects to top off with Mike Rigney, who made that contact during that run with Big Joe Hassard. Creighton Carter, Ricky Harden, all ducking in this caution.
I don't know that they're topping off, Justin. I think they might just be doing tires only. That's certainly what I would be doing right now if I were in sort of the back half of this lead lap. One of the things that you learn with the way that the tire works here on iRacing is that it's very very advantageous to take new tires and combine that with a lower fuel level. So normally when you put on tires, you fill it full of gas at the same time, and it sort of wears at a predictable level. But if you don't put any gas in, or put in very minimal gas, and you have a lighter fuel tank to start, your tires, not only do they grip better to start, but they stay gripping well throughout the course of the run here. So if I were the likes of Ryman, I would be taking tires, no fuel, no top off, and just go as fast as I possibly can on those fresh tires.
Fourth caution of the race, by the way, which does tie some of the top totals here at Atlanta in that regard, with Season 4 at LIS, as well as first for the Speedway Series. So all of the attrition build up. Expected to be a very wild one from this point forward, to say the very least. So we'll see how things fare out with Wagner, Oster, De Groot, Musselman, Schowen now the top 5. 3 factory back cars in the top 5. Of note, Samuel Ryman amongst those who ducked on in, amongst those in the grouping of drivers trying to burn some of the fuel in the heart of the pack before this restart.
Yeah, and if I'm Matt Wagner, I'm got my worst case scenario here with 3 team cars sitting right behind me on this restart. And certainly if they were marginal on fuel before, they're much closer to being good on fuel now. So it looks like, so far at least, it was a good gamble for these drivers to take to stay out. They've used the track position well. But that being said, Matt Taylor, 9th position right now. He's not necessarily out of this race. No, I was right. 6th position for Matt Taylor. Yeah. Not out of this race at all, and he has much fresher tires than the 5 cars in front of him.
Beck didn't want to go signal this time. A lot of stories to consider when breaking things down. Joe Branch, he's minded his own business. Same thing was said when you can think about him from Pocono. He's been maintaining patience. You know, others, such as Matthew Short, looking for some of the best runs of the season. Now top 10 because Trevor Malone has come in this time by. And then you consider, too, the points factor of things. The championship may be flipped on its head once more with how crazy things have gone, and some of the contenders having struggles and being involved in the wrecks, such as Andrew Wood or Luis Gonzalez Nunez in trouble, Mike Rigney amongst those losing track position. Big chances to see massive changes for the points leaders after tonight.
Yeah, really not sure what Trevor Malone is doing. He should not have been coming down. He should have either come down when the pits first opened or not at all here. But you mentioned points, but Joe Branch, our points leader, again, quietly doing his thing and doing exactly what's got him into the lead of the championship so far, which is consistent top 5, top 10 runs. And that's exactly what he's doing here today again.
Here's the thing to consider, though. If things stay the way they are, he would lose the points lead to Wagner, who is 3 points back entering tonight.
But how much do you want to bet it stays the same, Justin?
It's a losing bet regardless. So, $0. Meanwhile, drivers try and win themselves a race with 20 to go up on the board. Wagner off and away, green flags back out from Atlanta. Wagner tries to pull off and away from the factory-backed triplets. They line up right behind. Oster trying to go for the pounds. Here comes the 9 to the outside. Wagner can't get the block. Oster with the run. Tries to go the long way across the big bump in turn 3. Tries to give the pinch through turn 4.
The question is, can the momentum benefit Oster here? No, he goes back down in the line. So this is what it all comes down to, is will the factory-backed cars be able to roll that outside on Matt Wagner? Because Matt Wagner does not look like he is going to move 1 inch off of that bottom line there, Justin.
Oster trying to peek again to the outside. Can't make it work as well compared to the first attempt. De Groot tries the very bottom right behind them. Majority of the other drivers staying single file behind them. Oster side by side into turn 1 this time. Tries to floor it up top. Wagner again gets himself clear. Will this lead to the cross? Wagner slides up. Wagner slides back down. Oster can't get to the inside.
Yeah, so far it hasn't worked, but the tires are still fairly cold. They're still fairly new. But look at that red car on the outside, just at the back end of this screen. Matt Taylor trying to take on Tony Schowen. And Taylor is now into this top 5. And if he can get through some of these factory back cars, he, I think, is going to be a real threat here come the end of this race.
Here comes Oster again to the inside. Tries to fake him out to the outside. 16 to go this time as Oster tries to wheel it up top. Again, Wagner hugs the very bottom. Oster tries to switch, gets a bit loose. Nearly clips the grass as he goes back single file.
Man, Oster's got to be careful here. The game for Oster has to be to force Matt Wagner to use up as much of his tires as he possibly can, while simultaneously not using up any of his own tires. And Jacob Oster, with the way that he's waving right now, he's really putting a lot of tax on those tires. And I really think that he might be shooting himself in the foot and might just be Nick DeGroot who's in the better position right now.
I was about to say, it's going to be very intriguing how these drivers keep up with the changes of the patterns we talked about earlier, right? From bottom to top to bottom to top. Drivers need to be prepared for that, and right now DeGroot's been preferring the bottom. Oster has lost ground now as he still tries the top.
Yeah, and you're starting to see the factory back cars, they're starting to fan out a little bit. And if you're Matt Taylor, that's going to be very, very difficult to overcome when you have 3 team cars running all different lines right in front of you. He's going to have to find a creative way to get by at least AJ Musselman here if he's going to have any shot at getting up towards Matt Wagner at the front.
Speaking of Matt Taylor is on the move. He goes for 4, trying to break up the factory back group. To the inside, trying to wrap it down with the fresher tires. Gets the pull. Up in front of them, the swap is on. DeGroot's up the second. Taylor tries to hook onto the draft of DeGroot and does to clear for 4th.
That is exactly what Matt Taylor needed to do here. Now he's got to set his sight forward. Jacob Oster, we know, or we think at least, that his tires are probably not feeling exactly the best right now. So if Matt Taylor can keep that momentum up on that high side, really start to roll in and get a nice run on Oster, he really stands a chance. But there's only 11 laps to go now, Justin. The laps are definitely ticking by for Taylor if he has any hope of displacing Wagner and DeGroot at the front of this field.
Taylor once again clear from Musselman. Tony Schowen also trying to fight with Craig Forsyth behind. That loses them a bit of ground. 11 laps to go. To the inside now for 3rd. Oster still tries the very top. Weaver wobbles his way back to 4th on the pylon. Taylor now 9/10 back of the race leader as he clips the apron. Taylor slides back up. Here comes Oster with a bit of the cross attempt. Elects to check up instead.
Yeah, big wiggle there from Taylor, but he got lucky that Oster just didn't have quite enough of a run to really make that work. Meanwhile, you can see right behind Craig Forsyth nearly drifts into the side of AJ Musselman coming off of turn 4 there. That was very, very close. And even further back in the pack, there is also a battle for 12th and 11th position between Goodman, Malone, Rigney. It's a hornet's nest back there, and it has been for a few laps. But all of the action right here where we're looking right now. Forsyth on the move here, gotten by Musselman. Now he's got his sight set on Oster as well. The factory back cars on those old tires, they're just not surviving the way that they were hoping for, and they're really starting to fall back into the clutches of some of these other drivers on clean tires.
Such as Forsyth.
Big wiggle from Oster there.
Oster really struggling on the tires. Here comes Joe Branch, near 3 wide. He backs up with Tony Schowen clearing. Bit of a peek now from Dean Mull. Some of the drivers, keep in mind, who are in this fray now on even footing tires. Dean Mull with a big run. Nowhere to take it, though, with 8 to go.
And that's the problem, is sometimes you get a big run and you have nowhere to go. You have to check up, and that puts you back into the clutches of the other people like Trevor Malone right behind him. We talked about Trevor Malone having that late stop on that run. He has worked himself all the way back up into 10th place, and he has the freshest tires of everyone in this top 10 here, Justin.
Battle for second. Matt Taylor has passed Nick DeGroot on the fresher rubber. Half a second back. Has about 7 laps to work with. Last time by, he was a 10th quicker than Matt Wagner, even with the pass. Will he get there is the big question. Half a second back, coming up to the final stages of the race.
Will the fresh tires of Matt Taylor be the difference, or will it be the clean air that Matt Wagner has in front right now? Matt Taylor has everything to do in order to get to the back of Matt Wagner, let alone find a way past him. But if there's any driver that can do it, it's Matt Taylor, but not if he keeps clipping the apron like he does, Justin.
Second time he's clipped at this run already in the past 5 laps. Coming up to 5 laps to go, Taylor lost 2/10 as a result of that clip. Can he clip down the gap? Meanwhile, in the battle for 8th, they fight extremely hard. We're still outside the point of no return by a couple laps, mind you. 3 wide nearly as Malone tried to force it.
Oh, now is not the time to force a 3 wide, especially with the tires as shot as Jacob Oster's has. You can tell just how badly he's struggling on those old tires right now. He's did everything that he possibly can do to hold on to this, and he is in deep, deep trouble here. Now getting swarmed by Hacker. Rigney's right behind him. Creighton Carter's in there, Sam Ryman, Michael Goodman as well. This is disastrous for Jacob Oster. He's been so strong for so long, and these tires are just
trouble.
giving up the ghost. Oh no!
He slides. He saves it. Ryman nearly hit the wall as well. Goodman bottled up. 3 to go to the point of no return. Everyone tries to hold on for 3 more times around. Wagner still leads by 0.6 of a second.
That was nearly disastrous here, but great job there from Mike Rigney holding on to it, and that might just be the reprieve that Jacob Oster needs to in order to hold on to his 11th place finish right now. Meanwhile, back at the front, Matt Taylor just only has gotten up 0.2 of a second on Matt Wagner, but it's Tony Schowen now starting to make a move. He's gotten back around AJ Musselman, and he's trying to get back up onto Craig Forsyth as well. So Schowen back into the top 5. This is exactly the type of run Schowen needed to end his bad luck streak.
His best run of the season, but coming up to the white flag, this time by Matt Wagner. Looks for victory 1 of the campaign. He's been in the top 5 3 times. He's been in the conversation every race this season. But with the white flag waving, he looks to close it out. 0.6 the gap.
So many times Matt Wagner has guessed wrong on the strategy, and so many times we've seen him be fast and leading the race and not close it out. This time, it looks like he's going to do it, Justin.
He maintains the 0.6 of a second gap for the final time around. Matt Wagner wins in the Lionheart Speedway Series. He wins today's race in Atlanta. The GSI Atlanta 200, presented by Next Level Racing, goes to Wagner.
What a run here today from Matt Wagner. That was exactly the type of rebound performance that we needed to see from him, and that's going to vault him up into the lead of the championship, if I'm not mistaken. So great run here from Matt Wagner. He had the speed. He was fast all day, qualified well, but finally, Justin, he puts it all together and takes one home.
First victory of the campaign, a huge victory for the number 3. Taylor to Groot, Forsyth, Schowen amongst the top 5 as well. But he's able to hold on to the very end for Dark Horse Racing. Victory 1 of 2022. Backs up that qualifying speed he showed from the get-go in this campaign. Atlanta brings thrilling finishes. It brought another one here tonight in the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by Moser Racing. And for Matt Wagner, he'll be able to vault himself up in the standings as a result. Let's take a look at the unofficial race results, brought to you by SimRace 24/7. Wagner picked up the victory by 0.617 seconds over Matt Taylor, while Nick DeGroot picked up the first top 3 for him of the season for factory-backed. 40 sim racing driver Craig Forsyth finished 4th, with Tony Schowen his first top 5 of the season in 5th. AJ Musselman his best run of the campaign in 6th, with Trevor Malone, Joe Branch, Ron Hacker, Dean Mull, the top 10. 11th spot tonight went the way of Samuel Ryman after surviving the craziness involving Mike Rigney in the later stages. Both of them passed Jacob Oster towards the checkered. Oster dropped from the top 5 to 13th in the end. Creighton Carter was amongst those in the grouping as well in 14th, with Michael Goodman, who dominated early, finishing 15th after hitting early. Paul Jenkins in 16th, Matthew Short, Ricky Harden rounded the lead lap cars, with Will Gibson, Hugo Gallitz, top 20. Kristen Jasper, 21st, with Mike Gibson and Andrew Wood amongst those in the top 23. Of note, Wood is the first DNF. Bauer also crashed with them, along with Big Joe Hester involved in some trouble the previous run, finishing 25th. Isaiah Dupree finished a DNF with Jim Herrick in 27th behind him, Gary Godsell in 28th, James Watson, Vern Hawkins III, the top 30. 31st tonight went to Gabriel Wood after contact Luis Gonzalez Nunez, Sam Crow, Shane Coogan, George Nzoto, Dakota DeMade, and Jeff Shion. The top 37, fastest lap, Trevor Malone, 24.431. That's a look top to bottom of the unofficial race results brought to you by SimRace 24/7. So this brings us into our post-race coverage presented by HyperX and the post-race show, as the Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows for all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. The celebrations are on for drivers tonight. As Matt Wagner makes his way to HyperX Victory Lane, let's get the chance to catch up with some of the drivers who are amongst that intense finish here from Atlanta. Matt Taylor finished in second place tonight and is amongst those drivers standing by after the thrilling finish here at Atlanta. He joins us here on RaceSpot and ESTV. Matt, you nearly closed in for the victory on the fresher tires. 0.6 too short though in the end.
Yeah, those colder temperatures at the end helped his older tires balance out. We needed that just to go long. We needed that just to go green to the end. Unfortunately, just a little bit short.
It seemed to be a tricky margin to try and get around the circuit. Clipped the apron, in fact, a couple times throughout that run. How difficult was that sprint to get up to Wagner? You got within 0.4.
Yeah, it was really tough. The car had a lot of grip, way more grip than it had all night. We were trying to conserve tires, particularly at the start of this race, and just kind of hang on to them, which really well allowed me to get to the front, and it ended up sort of turning into a fuel mileage race a little bit. I want to thank again having Raceverse on the car and 4D Racewear. They have some new stuff coming out that's pretty cool, and then Sunset Arctic for doing our paint schemes.
Well, tonight fared out to be a very intriguing, to say the very least, from Atlanta, but the next time out brings us to Kentucky, and that's going to be intriguing. The HyperX 200 at Kentucky. Thoughts ongoing towards Kentucky.
You know, it should be interesting. It was, if I'm remembering correctly, it wasn't that dissimilar to this race last season, where you can kind of pull away. The tires are important, so if it's just like it was tonight, I'm ready to go.
Don't forget, that was the race where it went green to checkered, and Alexander Van der Sant went 45 laps per run to save gas last year at that circuit. Thank you very much for the time, Matt.
Thank you, Justin.
Once again, that is Matt Taylor finishing second. Now towards HyperX Victory Lane, the celebrations are on for one Matt Wagner, who ended up pulling off the victory today. It's been intriguing trying to sort out the strategy, trying to sort out the calls, and trying to sort things out to see how competitors can fare out. And the celebration is on for those amongst their camp. Amongst those now jumping alongside, Matt Wagner joins us. Matt, you picked up the victory tonight. How does it feel to win in 2022? Matt Wagner, do you have a copy? We'll try that one more time in just a moment. Nick DeGroot finished in third. Your best run for Factory Back this season and as a group this campaign. How are you feeling from the Factory Back camp?
Yeah, really happy to finally get this thing on a podium. It's been a while. It was pretty cool to have a couple teammates up there with me. It's a shame we couldn't get that win, though. I mean, it's cool for Matt. Awesome to see him win. I've raced with him a lot in some other leagues like Dark Horse in these cars, and yeah, but man, I'm kind of wishing he pitted, because we would have been 1, 2, 3, and I think the three of us working together, we could have held back Matt and Craig, and that would have been nice. But yeah, I'll take the podium. We've had a lot of bad luck in this number 89 car, so yeah, to get Factory Back podium finally, that's really cool.
How different has this campaign been? Because of course, you had a very strong contingency with you, much to the third, and Newsom in particular last season. That's obviously now changed this season with yourself, AJ Musselman, along with Jacob Oster in the group. What's been that dynamic like now for this campaign compared to last?
Yeah, it's really different, but I gotta say it's a also kind of the same because Alexis has been nice enough to be there in our ear for as many of these races as she could be to kind of help us out, guide us through there. But yeah, last year it was so different with Rob and Alexis. I was heavily leaning on them for everything. And now I've kind of been thrust into this role as the senior team leader. I'm like, okay. So it's good to have her there to lead on. And Jacob and AJ, they're awesome teammates. And yeah, it's definitely been a shift. It's going to be a different season for us, but hopefully we can eke out a couple wins. We were close tonight, so I think one's coming.
And of course, on top of things, how's that balancing as well with your work with motorsport.com?
Yeah. I mean, thankfully there's been no NASCAR rainouts yet, so I haven't missed a race because of that on Monday, but have missed a couple this season for this reason or that. So not ideal. I was hoping to run every race this year, but there's a lot of races kind of make up for that, and hopefully we don't have to miss any more because I really wanted to run for the championship and try to retain the title for Factory Back Motorsports.
Huge run for you tonight and your team. Third spot for you, AJ Musselman 6th. Jacob Oster holds on after falling off late to 13th. Congrats on the podium.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you to Factory Back Motorsports. Awesome race.
Nick DeGroot rounds out the top 3. Matt Wagner still amongst those, celebrating big time in HyperX Victory Lane. Still preparing things for a chance to head towards that way potentially. We'll turn towards you though for the moment, Andrew. Entertaining action to say the very least once more. Strategy coming into play once more. But in the end, it's Matt Wagner who stays on track and holds on in the end.
Yeah, it was an absolutely dominating drive from Wagner. He did absolutely everything right. He picked the right strategy, and that was really his Achilles heel for so many races so far this year. He just did the exact right strategy, made it work, got exactly enough fuel left in that tank at the end in order to take it home, fend off Matt Taylor at the end there. And that clean air really made all the difference when it came down to that battle for the victory.
And of course, next time out, touched upon this a little bit when it came to the interview with Matt Taylor. Kentucky is next. And last year, that was a very wild, intriguing finish because that was the race where Robert Malechka III, remember, dominated for a majority of the time up front. But it was Alexander Van de Sant who stretched the gas to 45 laps per run, ran out towards the start and finish line, and picked up the victory that put him on the map. Of course, remember, that's with Legacy Kentucky with Lionheart's traditions.
Absolutely. And Legacy Kentucky is one of those tracks, much like Atlanta, where there's not just one way around the track, but there's many different ways, many different lines around the track. And it has always seemed to produce some fantastic finishes, nail-biting action right to the end of the race. And I expect nothing different from the race next time out.
Again, we'd like to take the time to thank Matt Taylor and Nick DeGroot for taking the time to speak with us. As Matt Wagner continues to take the time once more to celebrate in HyperX Victory Lane, I'd like to take the time to thank the presenting sponsors for tonight's action. Moza Racing is revolutionizing sim racing with the development of industry-leading hardware and software products like their R9 direct drive wheelbase and GS steering wheel. Featuring zero-delay wireless technology and made from high-end materials, Moza Racing delivers the precision you need to reach Victory Lane. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloudline gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. You're passionate about sim racing, but it always feels a little flat compared to the feeling of driving a real car. Now you can actually feel what it's like to drive a race car. Butt Kicker haptic hardware and software are easy to install and let you feel every bump on the track, the slip of the tires, and the engine red lines. The tactile feedback is so accurate and realistic, you'll be driving faster and having more fun than ever before. Next Level Racing is an industry-leading cockpit and motion simulator manufacturer devoted to creating the most immersive experience possible for the global sim racing community. Take your racing to the next level and visit www.nextlevelracing.com. Gomez Sim Industries are makers of high-end esports equipment and controls, precision built using nothing but the best materials available today. Passion and handmade craftsmanship drive each made-to-order build, creating a driving experience like no other. Visit GomezSimIndustries.com. And it's not just those names, but so many more and all the partners who help make things click in the Lionheart Racing Series. To learn more about them, visit lionheartracingseries.com and also find out more information on the 3 competitions that the Lionheart sanctioning body runs. As mentioned, the next time the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by Moser Racing hits the track is at Kentucky for the HyperX 200 at Kentucky. Once again, that will be taking place Monday, May the 9th, starting at 10:05 p.m. Eastern Time on RaceSpot and ESTV for 134 laps from Sparta. But with that, it's time to say goodbye. For my co-announcer and Andrew Kinsella, for producer Tyler Maxson, my name's Justin Prince saying so long, enjoy the rest of your evening. You've been watching the Lionheart Speedway Series from Hotlanta. Congratulations to Wagner, your winner from Atlanta.